There are 298 prisoners on death row in the state of Florida. This is part 25 of the series. Granville Ritchie, 45 years old, 3 years on death row. For the 2014 essay and murder of 9-year-old Felicia Williams, Ritchie is currently on death row. Young Felicia Williams was attacked and strangled by Ritchie before her body was placed in a suitcase and dumped into the ocean close to the Courtney Campbell Causeway. The woman who was watching her left her to buy drugs, leaving her with Ritchie alone. Before they met on May 16, 2014, Ritchie and Felicia were strangers, but they were both close to Ebony Wiley, who was the man's then girlfriend as well as the girl's neighbor and family friend. Felicia went to Ritchie's mother's apartment at the Doral Oaks apartment complex on the day of the murder, leaving her home with Wiley. Ritchie asked Wiley, who was watching Felicia, to go out and purchase some Mary Jane. The girl was later essayed and then strangled by Ritchie when Wiley was away. Ritchie claimed that he had given Felicia money to use to purchase candies at the local CVS store when Wiley arrived almost an hour later and did not find the little girl there. Marlon Joseph, 32 years old, 3 years on death row. For the murders of 36-year-old Kalada Crowell and her 11-year-old daughter Kyra Inglet on December 28, 2017, at a residence on 3rd Street in West Palm Beach, Joseph was given the death penalty. Kyra had previous issues with one of Joseph's daughters who was around her age. Investigators claimed that his daughter contacted him the day of the shooting to report another incident, even though the kids had resolved their differences by the time he arrived home. When Crowell arrived home, Joseph originally went to his room to read the Bible. However, he later approached her and shot her multiple times, including once in the head as she cried out for assistance. Then he is accused of chasing Kyra out of the house as she ran, hitting her 5 times, including 3 times in the head. Reynolds Sanabria, 51 years old, 2 years on death row. In April 2013, while aboard the boat Relax Inn, which was docked at the Loggerhead Marina close to Pinellas Point in St. Petersburg, Figueroa Sanabria killed John Travlos and Germana Morin. Authorities said that Figueroa Sanabria, a handyman who had previously worked at the marina, forced Travlos to open a safe containing jewels by holding him at knife point. Morin had his throat cut off from ear to ear, while Travlos had received 11 stab wounds. Marquette Lloyd, 48 years old, 1 year on death row. During a manhunt that started in December 2016 after Lloyd shot and killed his ex-girlfriend and her unborn child, a jury found Lloyd guilty of killing Orlando Police Lieutenant Deborah Clayton. In January 2017, Lloyd shot and murdered Clayton as she attempted to approach him outside a Walmart while he was on the run, according to authorities. Days later, he was detained. Lloyd was convicted on 5 charges, court records show, including first-degree murder of a police officer, attempted first-degree murder, aggravated assault, carjacking with a firearm, and possession of a firearm by a convicted felon. Clayton, 42 years old, was a master sergeant in the police department at the time of her death and was posthumously promoted to lieutenant. Everett Miller, 52 years old, 1 year on death row. Miller was found guilty of murdering Sergeant Sam Howard and Officer Matthew Baxter. The 2 officers were shot in August 2017 while responding to a report of gunfire between Palm Way and Cypress Streets. Dispatchers got a call regarding policemen being shot at around 9:32 p.m. Miller was a 21-year Marine Corps veteran whose last known address was in Orlando. At the time of his last service, he was a master sergeant with the U.S. Special Operations Command at McAdill Air Force Base in Tampa. William Roberts, 62 years old, 1 year on death row. He is on death row for killing his girlfriend and riding around with her body in the trunk of her car for 4 days. Hellstrom, 55 years old, sustained bleeding on the brain, a shattered sternum, broken ribs, pulled abdominal fat from muscle tissue resembling stomping, and nearly split a kidney. Her limbs and legs were covered in bruises and abrasions, and her ear had been severed. A short, sturdy wooden handle smeared in her blood and his DNA and discovered in his bloody RV had caused more than 40 wounds on her body. A surveillance video showed him dragging her body out of the trailer. Tyrone Johnson, 47 years old, 1 year on death row. In November 2021, Tyrone Johnson was found guilty of killing Stephanie Willis and her son Ricky, who was 10 years old. That evening, Johnson was inconsolable as he told investigators that he felt attacked by Stephanie and had no choice but to shoot her. Johnson claimed that Ricky got caught into the crossfire as he ran into the master bedroom. A different picture was painted by the prosecution, however. They claimed that after killing his girlfriend, Johnson went in search of Ricky, who was hiding, and then shot him. Bullet casings were found under the little boy's bed. Mark Wilson, 33 years old, 1 year on death row. Wilson was convicted of first-degree murder for the deaths of Robert Baker, 12 years old, and Tatian, 14 years old, who were both killed in August 2020. The boys were beaten with a hammer before having their throats slashed by Wilson, who at the time was living with his wife, the boy's aunt, in a shed on the family's Melrose property. During the killings, their mother, Sarah Baker, was sound asleep inside the residence. Wilson appeared to have repeatedly attempted to slit older brother Tatum's throat. According to reports, Robert, the younger brother, had his throat cut end to end, almost causing him to lose his head. During the trial, Baker testified that she had observed Wilson outside before the killings, honing a knife that would subsequently be identified as the murder weapon. An 18-foot blood trail led her to her oldest son's body, which she discovered. The extent of the boys' injuries were initially concealed by the blankets that both boys were wearing. Lauren Cole, 57 years old, 28 years on death row. On February 18, 1994, Cole was found guilty of murdering John Edwards and given the death penalty. John Edwards and his sister Pam went camping in the Ocala National Forest over the course of the weekend on Friday, February 18, 1994. Cole came by and introduced himself as Kevin and helped them settle in as they were setting up camp in the Hopkins Prairie. Later that evening, Cole and William Paul, who was not related to Cole, returned to the Edwards campsite. Cole introduced William Paul as his brother. The four made the choice to go for a walk after spending time by the campfire. Cole attacked Pam while she was on the move, knocking her to the ground, striking her in the head, and handcuffing her. John and Paul started to argue at the same time. Paul was holding a walking stick when John grabbed it and started beating him with it. Cole assisted Paul in restraining John and placed him close to his sister on the ground while handcuffing Pam. All John could do was apologize to his sister for putting her in such a risky predicament while Cole and Paul were robbing the siblings. Paul moved Pam up the trail while Cole stayed behind with John and thrashed him for earlier assaulting his brother with a walking stick. Cole soon joined Paul and Pam and advised them to wait until John fell asleep before leaving. After that, Cole returned to the injured John and cut off his throat while claiming to Pam that he was merely removing John from the trail and tying him up. John perished from several skull fractures and a sliced throat. Pam was returned to the campsite by Cole and Paul, where Cole essayed her. The following day, Cole assured Pam that John was fine while making the pretense that he was going to check on him. Pam was then assaulted again by Cole, who then tied her between two trees. Early on Sunday morning, Pam was able to free herself from the bonds. She initially stayed put out of concern for her brother's safety, but Pam ultimately hailed down a driver who drove her to call the police. Pam gave police a comprehensive description of Cole and Paul, which allowed officers to recognize them and apprehend them. Anthony Ponticelli, 56 years old, 35 years on death row. Ponticelli convinced two brothers they could conduct a drug deal by luring them to an isolated spot. The brothers were in the front seat and Ponticelli was in the back, making a total of 3 men in the vehicle. Ponticelli shot both of them in the back of the head during the journey. Ralph Grandinetti, 20 years old, passed away instantly, but his brother was still conscious, and Ponticelli struck him with the revolver to stop him from wailing. Ralph Grandinetti's body was discovered by authorities near the Silva Springs Mobile Home Park. 25-year-old Nicholas Grandinetti was rushed to the hospital, but he also passed away. Please hit that subscribe button if you like my channel. See you next time. Bye bye.